just remove this wheel, 19mm socket, take off all 5 of your lug nuts. With this last one, the hubcap is going to want to come off if you have one. So just keep that in mind. Take that off, remove the wheel, give it a couple taps if it's stuck. Inside the trunk, you have to take down this cover here, or the side carpeting, and right behind it you'll see 2 nuts, one on this side right here, the other one is a little more difficult to see, but it's right back there, basically on the opposite side. 15mm nuts. Leave this one on a few threads. Alright, that's off. Take this one off the rest of the way. I did that just in case the whole strut wanted to fall down. On the bottom side, you'll see an 18mm nut right here. Use the socket on that one, and then you have to hold the bolt side with an 18mm wrench. Take that off. The bolt is spinning, which is a good sign. Sometimes they get frozen in there. I'm going to put the nut back on, make it flush with the end of the bolt, and I'm going to use my hammer and drive the bolt through. Okay. I'm going to hold on to the strut and hammer the bolt through the whole way. Use a punch and a hammer, drive the bolt through the rest of the way. Pry up on the strut, or whichever way you need to, and remove the bolt. There we go. So there's the bolt. So the next step is to remove this bolt for this lower control arm so that we can swing the arm down and create enough clearance for the strut to come out. I'm going to hold this bolt with an 18mm wrench, put my socket on the nut side. Okay, the nut came off and the bolt is spinning, so that's a good sign. That means it's not frozen in there. Take your hammer, drive the bolt out. Okay, here's a little trick. Use your wrench and your socket. There we go. Now you can pull down on this arm, make enough clearance for the top of the strut to clear the body. Then you can pull this up and out, and there it is. So I have the strut assembly in a spring compressor. This is the only way I recommend doing this. This can be very dangerous. The spring is under a lot of pressure. So now that it's properly clamped in, I'm going to go ahead and compress it. I want to go until I can see that the strut is separating from the spring, the shock absorber part, that is. There we go. I didn't see that it was already doing that at the top, but basically now we just have to remove this top nut right here. 15mm socket, remove this center nut, hold on to the strut, otherwise it's going to fall to the ground as soon as it lets go here. So the air gun didn't work. Usually what happens is it will pull the nut off slowly, but clearly that didn't work because it's still tight on here. So I'm going to clamp some, oops. So I'm going to slide a 15mm wrench on here, clamp some locking pliers on, and I'm just going to go ahead and remove the nut this way. Now we just have a couple more threads on this nut. I'm going to grab it at the very top, and hopefully that'll be enough to hold it in place. Yeah, there we go. Nuts off. So there we go. This nut is off. We can push the shock down, save all of this, save the shock mount and everything. Take this out. Here's your old strut, or the shock absorber part of the strut assembly. Don't forget to take off the spring seat, the insulator for the spring that sits on the bottom of this old piece. And you want to take it, slide it over the new one. There we go. So before we put this in, now that it's ready to go in, I'm going to take a socket. A 3/8 socket will fit nicely up here. That way you don't have to hurt your hand on this, or if you have anything else like a piece of wood or whatever, to press on the shaft of the shock. You want to press this shock in and out. It's called starting it or priming it. And what this is going to do is it's going to mix all the oils inside, get them activated and ready for usage. So let this rise all the way to the top, and I like to compress it 3 or 4 times, and it's going to get stiffer every time. That's exactly what you want. You want to make sure you go all the way down until it stops. Okay, this is getting pretty stiff here. It's hurting my hand, so I think we should be good now. Now take the new shock or strut, slide it through. Why won't it go? Okay, line it up. Put in the new nut up top. Okay. This nut is now a 17 millimeter. I'm going to put my ratcheting wrench on here, lock my locking pliers onto the shaft of the strut. Nice and tight. And I'm just going to go ahead and snug this up. I can't really torque this because I have to hold the shaft at the same time, which means I can't use a socket on here. But just do your best to get this nice and tight. Okay, that bottomed out. Go ahead and snug it. Release your tools. Now let's center this up. So make sure the spring is seated where it needs to be. The rubber pad here has a cutout for where the spring ends. You want to make sure that matches up. And then just go ahead and match up the bottom here. There should be a little cutout on here for where the spring ends. Let's do that. Release pressure. All right, now let's remove our strut assembly from the spring compressor tool. We'll get it back into the vehicle. Now take your strut assembly, slide it down. Slide it into the top. There we go. Let's bring this up. So now that the strut is through the control arm, bring it up, and let's line it up with the control arm down here. Oh, it goes in the other way. Make sure you put it in the right way. Okay. You can use a hammer to drive it through. Put your nut on. I'm not going to tighten it yet though. I just want it secured in here temporarily. I want to tighten it once the suspension is up at right height. That way the bushing doesn't wear prematurely and it's not at the wrong angle. I'm going to use a pole jack. If you're on the ground, I'm sure you can use a floor jack to do this. But basically, I'm going to raise this control arm up and line this hole up with the knuckle. That way I can put in my bolt. Let's put this bolt through. Put the nut on the other side. Tighten it up and torque it to 77 foot-pounds. hold the bolt side. That's it right there. Now let's torque this to 73 foot-pounds. .73 right there. Now we can remove our support and lower the suspension down. There you go. Let's put the two top mounting nuts back on. Snug them up and torque them to 41 foot-pounds. That's one. And that's two. Put this side molding / carpeting back. Let's get the wheel back on. Now before you put on your lug nuts on this, because we have a hubcap that actually gets held on by the lug nuts, you have to put this on first. And there's a cutout here that has to line up with your valve stem. Otherwise it won't sit on properly. So now that this is on, you can put on all 5 of your lug nuts, snug them up, and then torque them to 100 foot-pounds. There you go.